All right, let's move on to the Washington Post. WaPo in disarray. All right, so we had, you guys, just a brief overview. We had two big stories that happened. Number one was Taylor Lorenz. So she smeared two different YouTubers, Legal Bites, and I think the umbrella guy to Legal Bites, who we had here on our channel. She's a member kind of LawTube. Taylor Lorenz basically smeared her and him and said that they were grifting off of the Amber Heard trial and insinuated that they were doing so purely for money. And then she wrote that without contacting them. She put, though, in the story that she had contacted them for comment. Now, both Legal Bites and the Umbrella Guy were able to prove that that was not true, and there was a messy correction that was issued. Taylor Lorenz officially then comes out and says, it wasn't me, it was my editor.
Oh, it's never her fault, is it?
It's never her fault that she's lying and gets caught being unprofessional online, and as a journalist, is it? Very interesting. So, okay. Eric Wemple, the media critic over at the Post, he's done a good job of this. He begins taking fire at his own paper. So here's his little investigation. Let's put this up there on the screen. So Taylor Lorenz said an editor was to blame. Is that okay? So here's what's really interesting. What he points out is that not only was this against Krystal, Washington Post policy in order to blame editors for a mistake, but it also, whenever this happens, what he's pointing to is that not only did she violate the internal policy, but that the current investigation that he's done reveals that the editor's note at the top of the story still maintains a material falsehood. So let's put this up there from Glenn Greenwald, which he shows that the latest editor's note still contains a demonstrable material falsehood because they point out that by Lorenz's own account, she didn't contact either YouTuber for comment until after the story, a circumstance which is in conflict with the current editor's note. Now, when Wemple actually asked the Washington Post for clarification, they said if the Post can't nail down the facts in an editor's note, where else should we trust it to do so? They said, quote, that stands as is. We won't be able to get into what the internal discussions are. So I think that that is very extraordinary because, and this is what he says, according to 3 sources in his meeting, one reporter asked the editor of the Washington Post, editor-in-chief Sally Busby, saying that the colleagues had learned that she had offered this new editor a job but then rescinded the offer. And as a result, she didn't deny that timeline. So now a guy is basically going to lose his job as a result of this story. It's not at all clear, Krystal, whether this is that editor's fault at all and whether Taylor Lorenz lied to her own editor and is throwing this guy under the bus.
But also, isn't it basic journalistic practice to reach out to people for comment?
Yeah, well, if you're going to mention somebody in a story and you're especially going to make an insinuation like that, you absolutely have to.
Yeah, so I don't see how this, even her explanation,
no, it doesn't
even if it is true that the editor inserted this, well, yeah, the editor inserted it because they assumed you did your damn job and actually reached out to these people, but you didn't. So then to just like throw the editor under the bus like that, I think is, I don't know, that's pretty gross. Wemple even says that the way he phrases it is blaming editors can be a craven act.
Yes.
So he doesn't come right out and say this was a craven act, but he says this can be a craven act. But yeah, I think the larger issue here, which is an organizational issue and not specific to Taylor Lorenz, is your correction and they now have labeled it an editor's note. It's still wrong.
Yeah.
It's still a lie. And not only are you not explaining that to the public, your own media reporter is like, hey, this is not right. And they're like, no comment. I mean, so he puts it in exactly the right way. Why does this matter? I mean, this is like kind of a nit, you know, this little like detail on this one story and the timeline of when they were reaching out to you for correction. But it does sort of raise this foundational question. If we're supposed to be relying on you for the facts, and if you can't, after multiple revisions, come to the actual truth about something like this, like that does undercut your credibility on literally everything else you're publishing in your paper.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, really what he's pointing to is that, look, if we can't even count on you guys to fix the editor's note properly, then how can we count on you to tell us the truth? And I think the truth is, see what I did there, is that you can't count on them to tell them the truth. I mean, Lorenz herself at this point has beclowned herself to a degree which is unfathomable, you know, in her short tenure at the Washington Post. She doxes the libs of TikTok. TikTok woman. Then she comes out and breaks the news that the Disinformation Governance Board is shutting down, but she frames it as a result of bad faith campaigns. She's not able to do any actual reporting. And this is just the latest example, which is that she's going after defending the integrity of Can you imagine using your platform of the Post to defend the integrity of Amber Heard? Like, why?
That particular article that we had Legal Bites to talk about, that it really pissed me off because the article specifically went after these couple of creators who, extensively covered the Heard Depp trial, which we did not.
Yeah.
But implicitly, she's going after the entire independent media
and the
infrastructure.
lawsuit in particular.
Right. I mean, that's the whole implication is that if you're operating in these non-traditional areas, it's just a grift. You can't be trusted.
Right.
She talks in that column about how you don't have journalistic standards in the same column where she herself is caught lying and multiple times violating journalistic standards. She has the gall to say, oh, these independent creators, they don't have journalistic standards. So that column was part of her war against independent creators, and that's why it pissed me off so much. So that's kind of the overall context for which, this whole thing plays out against. And she's so sloppy. There's also, now there's leaks coming out that I think Wemple sort of alludes to about how within the Washington Post, people are also getting really frustrated with her too, because she's this big name star reporter brought in with like a splashy press release and all of that stuff. And then she's making these extremely basic mistakes and making all of them in their work look bad. So I think there's not a lot of love for her with her colleagues at this point either.
Yeah, but
not that they're gonna say anything about it because they're too afraid.
People are cowards. They're not going to say a damn thing, and they're watching their paper just basically get completely lit on fire.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.